Thank you, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our annual customer event. So was everyone at the Engaged Award last night? Can I see a show of hands? How many were here? What'd you think? Great show, eh? I'm just going to take a few seconds to thank my team. For those of you that weren't here, and you see around, you see all the blue logos and all the blue customer event logos. Last night, this all transformed into red logos for the Most Engaged Workplaces Award with step and repeats outside, lighting, ice sculptures, and everything. It was like we're putting on 2 weddings at the same time. And I was asked on frequent occasions, who did we hire to do this for you? They've done a fantastic job. What agency did your creative? And I couldn't have been prouder to say we didn't hire anybody. This was the people that work for us that did this. Bill Caligeros and his creative genius team did all the artwork for this, did all the production for all the materials that you see. Lauren Maisels and her team did all the event coordination, logistics, and put on just a fantastic event. So I want to thank my team. Thank you very much. So this morning, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Bob, our first keynote speaker of the day, and he's going to speak to you about how the millennials are coming. I didn't know the term millennials before I joined I Love Rewards, which is about 5 months ago, but what I've learned is what we really call them is the trophy generation, and most of the people in this room are responsible for creating them. And what I mean by trophy generation is that we raised children that got trophies for winning soccer tournaments, losing tournaments, participating in tournaments, and now they work for us. So life's a little irony there. So Dr. Bob's going to tell us how we're going to deal with that. As you know, Dr. Bob is the world's foremost expert on rewards and recognition. We are extremely pleased to have him here. And he's been referenced a few times as being a rock star. So I'm going to share a few personal moments that I've had with Dr. Bob and witnessing it for myself. So the picture behind me, you can see the gentleman in the fedora and the t-shirt is Dr. Bob. What happened was we were at the SHRM conference in San Diego a few months back, and we had Dr. Bob in our booth for a few of the days. Now this picture here is from the first night where Dr. Bob wasn't scheduled to be there. He drove in his car over to the event with a boatload of books for us to hand out, came to the booth, delivered the books to us by hand, and this is him in his weekend wear, I'm guessing, or his booth babe outfit. I wasn't sure which when I first met him. He stayed because people flocked to him, and this picture shows it. And he stayed for 3 hours signing books, meeting people, talking with people, and this sort of speaks to the character of what he's like. He'll speak to anyone about anything, and he's more than happy to do it, and he's a great guy to speak with. Dr. Bob also hates carrots. How many of you have heard of O.C. Tanner in here? Probably a lot of you. I'm not going to do any competitor bashing, but Dr. Bob stole this carrot from the O.C. Tanner booth at a SHRM conference, and he's giving it a noogie. I've got pictures about other things he's done with the carrot, but I can't share them here. So an intro of Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is president of Nelson Motivation, a management and training consultant company located in San Diego, California. He sold over 3.5 million books on management and motivation. Most famous one, the one that we love and that all our staff has read, is 1,001 Ways to Reward Employees, now in its 55th printing. The 1,001 Ways, Rewards and Recognition Field Book, 1,001 Ways to Energize Employees. You can see a theme in Dr. Bob books. He's appeared extensively in the media. He's been on 60 Minutes, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, National Public Radio, and a litany of other publications. He not only holds an MBA in organizational behavior from UC Berkeley, he's received his PhD in management with the Peter F. Drucker at the Drucker Graduate Management School of Business. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the guru of thank you, Dr. Bob Nelson.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star.
All right. Thanks so much for coming up this morning. I know a lot of you guys stayed up late last night. Who's ready to have some fun today? Excellent. I know for me it started on the flight in. I live in San Diego, and flying's a real bear these days. You know, there's fewer planes. They're all smaller. They're all packed. But eventually you get through security. You get on the plane, and pull out the newspaper, maybe a novel you're reading. The guy next to me pulled out one of my books. And I thought, what a great chance to be a mystery shopper. Excuse me, sir, what do you think of that book? He got a little reflective. He goes, well, my boss gave me the choice of 3 books to read. This one was the shortest. So I write short books. I'm proud of that. I took that as a compliment. You gotta take what you can get. So it got me thinking that there's a lot to be said for being brief in these days. And we're hitting it faster, harder. You're expected to do more with less. And to focus on the short list of what's working for you and how you can do better at that, and maybe stop doing the things that aren't working, I think is a message that a day like today we can do. We can reflect on what's happening back at work and be a little bit better when we get back there. I started talking more to this guy. It turns out he was an executive from a Toronto company. At one point I asked him, well, how many people work in your organization? He didn't even blink. He said, about half of them, it seems. And and what's up with that? How can we get everyone on the same wavelength? How can we get the youngest generation, the millennials? There's a lot of questions about them. How can we get them on the same wavelength? That's what I'm going to try and focus on, bringing what I've learned about this generation, and actually, starting with, I've got a couple members of my own family. This is my tribe back at home. My wife Jennifer is a computer scientist. Danny's born in 1990. He's turning 20 in a week. Michelle is just turned 15. She was born 1995. These are members of the millennial generation. And it's an amazing group, really. And I know we're all proud of our own kids, but I got to tell you that Danny is in his 3rd year of learning Arabic. I can't imagine trying to learn Arabic, honestly. I heard it takes 17 times the number of words to say the same thing as in English. Michelle is in her 2nd year of learning Mandarin Chinese. The world's becoming a smaller place very, very quickly. And so whether it's talking about different cultures and the need to merge those today in the workforce, or different ages, we've got to find a way to make that happen, to not judge people based on preconceived notions, but to try to find out where they're coming from and work with them to get a better result together. In fact, on this for this presentation, my team did a lot of research. We actually reviewed over 40 books written about this generation. We did interviews and combined it with our own research. And as a final litmus test, I remember I brought Danny in the room. I said, Danny, I want to tell you about your generation. Let me know if I'm right or wrong. And so I asked him, high tech. Are you high tech? Absolutely, we're very high tech. Love technology, constantly using it. Okay, got that one. I said, multitasking. How are you multitasking? He goes, nah, not so good. I can only do one thing at a time. You try to do more than one thing at a time, you do them both poorly. So you can text and drive, but sooner or later you're going to have a car wreck. Maybe you're going to kill yourself. So don't do that. And so 1 out of 2, he didn't really buy into that. So I said, well, good with teams, good with groups. He goes, I don't really like working in groups. You got uneven abilities, you got uneven motivations. You end up and we've all seen this, you end up with a couple of people doing the work for everybody. They're kind of bitter. The other people got off scot-free. And so here I'm going three generalities about this generation, and he didn't buy into 2 of them. So I guess to me that was a good insight, because it's hard to put 75 million people in one bucket and say they're all the same. People are very different. So what we're going to talk about this morning is generalities. We're going to talk about tendencies. There will be exceptions, and my rule of thumb when it comes to this topic of recognition is no matter who you're dealing with, the real place to start is to what is it that motivates them? What does it for them? What do they find rewarding? Get clear on that, and then get clear about what performance you want from them, and then connect the 2. So regardless of what the issue, regardless of that you're trying to make happen, that's my rule of thumb, is to come back to those basics. So even with that, though, we want to see what this generation does have to offer, and so we're going to cover these things. We're going to talk about some overview of the generation, a profile, what they look like, what are the important factors that have influenced their lives, their outlook on their career. we want to compare them to the generation before them, the Gen Xers. And one of the questions I had in the research is that, I'm 54, everyone's younger than me, so I kind of say, how are these different generations, how are they different? Because I see them both as a lot of similarities. And so we're going to talk about what makes the millennials different than the Gen Xers. We want to then apply that to the workplace, and specifically what attitudes they bring to the workplace that impact their work, and then what to do, how to best meet them at those expectations to get a more motivated employee, someone that we can truly harness the power of what they have to offer for our mutual good. If we have any time left, we'll take some questions, and so let's dig right in here. The millennials. The millennials are not, when 60 Minutes interviewed me on this topic a few years ago, they were coming. They are now here. They're in the workforce. We have four different generations in the workplace right now. The traditionalists are those currently over 67, and that's a smaller percentage, as you can imagine, about 4% right now. We have baby boomers, of which I'm a member, currently makes up 37% of the workforce, 47 to 66. We have Gen Xers that are currently 27 to 46, currently make up 44% of the workforce, and then the millennials, currently 18 to 26-year-olds, that make up 14%. Now, these two youngest generations, if you add that up real quick, 58% of the population, the workforce right now, is from the two youngest generations. So there's a lot at stake to figure out how they see the world differently, how they see work differently to, again, harness that power. The other challenge on this whole topic, and depending on what organization you're in and your focus on this, that we've got a big challenge with the baby boomers are going to be retiring in the next decade. 70 million baby boomers are going to be retiring in North America. The generation that follows them, the Xers, actually aren't enough for them to fill those jobs. So it's kind of hard to realize this in the middle of a recession, that the shortage of talent is going to be upon us very quickly. That they, even if they had the skills and experiences, there aren't enough bodies to fill the same jobs that will become vacated. That's going to be a challenge. A lot of those we're going to be turning to this youngest generation, the millennials, which, depending on, and I found different stats for actually how many there are in the workplace, from 44 million currently in the workplace, rising every month, actually, every graduation, to some 46 on their way. Other stats put it at 70, 75 million currently in the workplace. So there's a lot of them. It's important to understand what they're all about. So do you know who these people are? I thought the best way to start is let's hear from them directly as to how they feel about the workplace. This is a interview of some millennials.
For vacations and your first 2 months of working here. Now, your bosses, boomers, they don't understand that at all.
Joe Muse holds monthly meetings with the young employees at his Hollywood advertising firm, trying to better understand the generational tug of war between them and their older bosses.
Why do you think that you can work places for a couple months and then get a vacation? And unpaid. You don't care if you get paid. What's up with that? I don't understand it.
But see, we're bred on like MTV and things in the media and magazines, and you see Lindsay Lohan, who's 19, and she makes this amount of money, and she spends the weekends in San Tropez, and then you have Puffy, who's 35, who's a multimillionaire, and you have all those are heroes. So the idea of working 10 years at a mediocre job to possibly have 3 or 4 weeks of vacation is not everything that we've ever experienced in terms of growing up has been microwavable, and what we're striving for is to be millionaires and fantastic successful by the age of 40.
30.
You know?
I'm betting the farm that your parents have spoiled you, at least your bosses think that way, because of the sense of entitlement. They're thinking that you have to have everything that you want and you got to have it now. You'll submit yourself to the authority, but you give the sense immediately that we ain't the boss of you. And boomers recognize that the boss is the boss. So what's that all about?
Well, I think the difference is now the boomers, they let their job define them a lot. So that's all they
True.
did. Where now, we do so many other things. We have so many choices. My job doesn't define who I am.
Muse Communications is not alone trying to cope with the arrival of Generation Next in the workplace. Companies large and small are faced with the unique demands and contributions of their younger employees.
We multitask and we have a lot of side things that we do. At the same time, I think a lot of people are very idealistic and they're going to college and they're graduating, they're crying in their rooms because they can't find a job that gives them meaning and purpose in life.
Meaning and purpose in life. This one thing that defines this generation is that they expect to have that from their first day of work. Not after paying their dues for 10 years, but from their first day of work. Now, I personally think we can deliver that. We can show them the connection of how their job, the contribution, if they do it well, will tie to the goals of the organization, will tie to the social responsibility, things of being part of the community, the things that are important to them. But it's not going to happen by accident. We have to make that connection ourselves. So as you look at this generation, here's, again, a little American Express. They're born between 77 and 98. Their height is they're very interested in soaring high very quickly. As far as they think they can go, their weight is they feel their opinion matters greatly, and what they do matters greatly. And these are good things. This is, I think, can be very healthy if we meet them at that and again, show them how they can make a difference in their job, in the organization today. Show them how what they do can lead to better things that are important to them. They find them anywhere, everywhere. They're the best educated generation in history. They are all about high tech, the latest tools. Their connections are instantaneous. You heard her say we're used to the microwave generation. We're used to doing everything instantly in a variety of modes. High comfort with that, and they're very optimistic. They're maybe even idealistic. They're socially responsible. These are, I think, healthy things. Again, they may be different from previous generations in the degree that they hold these, but I think they're healthy to deal with. Their key influencers, first and foremost, and this is kind of interesting, is their parents. That this is a generation, the baby boomers rebelled against their parents. This generation a very good relationship with their parents, and this is actually, the picture really captures it. This is, the parents are clinging to their kid because we love our kids, and we've worked hard to make their life as effortless as possible, to give them the best we possibly could afford, to help them as best we could, maybe more so than any other generation, that we've had the ability and the motivation to do that. And the downside of that is that the tendency is for parents today to be called helicopter parents, that they get to the point where they can't let their kid leave their own lives, that they're constantly involved. I had to do Danny's at Northwestern. I tell you, last year it took everything I had in me not to call a professor and have a little talk with him about his comments on the paper. And I didn't call, but it was really, really hard not to, because how could he? What does he, And so it's a tendency that, again, we have to overcome those urges and have a different let go and allow a different them to be themselves and to live their own lives. We've placed a lot of pressure on the generation to learn, to succeed. They feel that very, very, very much. Again, another positive is that they've got very close relationships with their parents. They're not rebellious. Their values are congruent. They accept our values, and this is a positive. Other big primary influence is technology. I have one of my favorite pictures of my daughter Michelle. She's 2 years old. She's at the computer with the mouse. We had a hard time getting her off the computer. She just loved it, and they're very good at calling up Google for information. They learn skills. My son learned how to type on a self-instructed thing in elementary school, simple things that they've embraced technology, texting, Facebook, IM, really anything anything. They're all about it. So these are our predominant influences. There's been cultural influences along the way too. Again, we all are what we were when, from our upbringing and exposures, the social modeling, social learning that occurs. So whether it starts with Barney and the Teletubby, babies, Pokemon, a huge craze, American Idol, which actually was, there's positives that come from TV sometimes. I know in my family, we all watched American Idol together. It was a family bonding experience, and there's fewer of those these days. And so when you get 25, 30 million families all watching the same thing and enjoying each other's company, that plays an impact. Harry Potter, the role models, it's difficult for me to think of Lil Wayne as a role model for anyone, let alone 75 million kids, but that's the reality of it. Britney Spears, when she's not in rehab, is a role model. Apple, Facebook, Pixar, Twitter, these are the shapers that are very front and center for them. When you look at the events that have shaped their lives, now again for baby boomers, and for those that are baby boomers here, raise your hand if you remember where you were when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Anyone? Okay, a couple. Well, I can't see that well, but I know I remember the room I was in. I remember what was said, or when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. I was 12. I remember that very clearly. Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon 15 years before this generation was born. It may as well be ancient Roman history. The things that are very real to them that have happened in their lives that have shaped their outlook on life are things like the fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989, or the Gulf War, first of the two, 1995, Columbine massacre at a high school, very, very influential in 1998. And this is a generation that's very comfortable with police. Police are our friends. They're very comfortable with now having to go through screening in schools. They're very comfortable at airports. They see a good thing in those security measures. And so again, it may be different from previous generations. The Y2K scare, the 9/11, of course, and the most recently the Great Recession that we're still pulling out of. That these are the things that have most affected them in their lives and outlook. And if you look at these, there's a lot of negative things. They're terrorism, financial crisis. It would cause them to question institutions. It would cause them to be more self-reliant, to be more adaptable, to be more resourceful, to expect changing times, because that's what they've lived their whole life, is a constant roller coaster of change, and that's what they've seen around them. That's normal to them. Again, this could be healthy. This is, I think, very healthy, because this is going to continue. Maybe not these same events, but in any organization today is very dynamic. Change is constant. And so for other generations that are waiting for things to go back to normal the way they used to be, this is a generation that meets circumstances as they are and pushes forward and makes the best of them, which is a huge plus for today. Now, one of the questions I had, how does this generation differ from the one right before them, the Xers? And here, there's many similarities, but the biggest difference is really the millennials are like the Xers on steroids. Like everything's ramped up a little bit more. So you take technology. The Xers are very able, but the millennials are turbo users. They just love it. They live for it. Diversity, Gen Xers were okay with it, but the millennials, they're immersed in it. One factoid I ran into is that 80% of the millennials have an immigrant parent today. So it's very natural to them, multicultural. It's the right way. It makes sense to them. So, the effort, the Xers were pushed for results. Again, the millennials set goals and achieve them, knock them down. They're very driven. And again, a wonderful quality. Feedback is key, especially on our topic of recognition. The Xers, they want it, they like it, but the millennials, they expect it, they demand it. So whereas the Xers, Someone told me the extras, if they got it once a year, they were okay with that. But for the millennials, they need it daily feedback. Now, again, here's some of the rubs with the generations. For a baby boomer, it's like, well, what's their problem? Do they have a short-term memory? I told them yesterday, are they? Do I have to tell them every day how great they are? And it's like, well, and a key differential here is that if they grew up with being special all the time, and they were on the team, the soccer team, the Little League team, and although the team came in last place, not only did the team get a trophy, but every member on it got a trophy. And then we went out for ice cream, So they had this maybe false reality that presented by their parents that really wanted them to have this completely positive, loving experience. So in some degrees, that might have put them at a disadvantage to the cold, hard reality of everything you do is not wonderful. And so I think we owe it to them to make the connection, to say, this is what good performance looks like. And if you want to be a top performer, here's the things you need to do, and to be explicit about that, to show them how to get to where they want to get to. And so we can't just pay you more just because you want to be paid more, or because P. Daddy's paid more. But if you want to increase what you earn, you've got to increase your ability to contribute, which is a function of your skills or the ideas you have and your ability to pursue those. We can make that path clear for them. And the more we do that, instead of assuming that they should know it, the better off we're both going to be. Parents love, again, the Gen Xers, they knew they had it. The millennials, they revel in it. And so they've had this positive, rosy outlook and the soft cushion of family, love, and trust that in many ways has set them up for who they are, but in many ways has set them up for a shock and surprise. I actually had a last time I spoke about the millennials, someone came up to me and they said, we judge the millennials, and actually they're the ones that have it right. They're the ones that have their focus on the things that are most important. It's the rest of us that are screwed up, that we need to adapt how we see life and work to be more like them. And maybe there's something to that as to what we can learn from them. Hopefully together we can get there. So the work attributes they have, well, let's see on expectations.
Well, I figure I'll be in my current position a couple of months, and then I'd like to do senior sales, for a couple of years, and then figure I'll be management, like you.
So big expectations very quickly, or at how they look at working hours, for example, a very kind of simple, basic thing.
So, I was thinking I would take off. It's like 8 o'clock, and my friend's band is playing at 9. Tomorrow, I was thinking I would roll in around noon, because I stayed really late tonight.
So I have a friend that her daughter came home from her first day at work and said, "Mom," this is a big eureka moment, "do you know you have to be at work every day at the same time?" It's like, what? Completely. And really, it's sort of like we kind of assume, but for them, it's like, no, work should be a part of the rest of the things that are important, and in its time and its place when I get to it. And so there's again a little bit of a redirection that just knowing that they may not see it exactly the same, and that might be a point of discussion, or on authority.
I see a lot of potential in you, so I'm going to give you a word of advice. When you email the senior VP, don't start with, "Hey, you."
So again, basic. You can't take anything for granted, So it's having those discussions where they're relevant. So the work attributes for the millennials, I think there's a lot they have to offer. Big upsides in their techno wizards, best we've ever seen. High comfort, high ease, quick to jump in, make things happen. They're very quick learners. This is a huge attribute. They're not afraid of challenges. They're extraordinarily resourceful. Again, in changing times, they're very comfortable with adapting, doing what's needed to make things work. They are very hardworking. They're high achieving. These are enormous benefits. And when I think of organizations today, in terms of what they most need from employees, these are the assets that are the greatest, highest advantage in dynamic, changing, fast-moving, fast-paced times. And so these are wonderful assets. These would be ideal employees, I feel, for the needs of the organizations today, if we don't kill them for the downsides. You know, if they survive long enough to be able to do that, because the downsides is they've got an inflated opinion of themselves. Their confidence, they're very overconfident, especially given a very limited experience. They need this, again, ongoing instant and ongoing feedback to constantly be told what they're doing right and how good they are. And again, that could look like they're insecure, like they're spoiled, but if you look at it from a practical perspective, they've learned that in changing times, you need a steady stream of information, because things are always changing. The way to be on the track that what I did yesterday is what you want me to do today is to have a constant feedback regarding that. I have a friend that runs a printing company. He told me he had a new employee, again, a younger generation. In her first week on the job, she came into his office. Here's the CEO of the company. She said, "Once a week, I'd like to get together with you and go over all the great things I've been doing for you." And he goes, "Okay, then, what's up with this?" She goes, "You know, I'm excited to be here. Everyone starts the job excited. I want to do my best. In order for me to do that, I've got to have feedback from you. And quite honestly, I don't know you from Adam. You seem like a nice guy. I don't know how you are when you're busy. I don't know how you are when you're in a bad mood." And she said, "Frankly, I don't care about those things, because I want to set up a structure in our relationship where I can get what I need so you can get what you need." And he goes, "Fine, we can do the meetings." Once a week, they did a little 20-minute meeting. They went over the things. And at the end of their fourth meeting, she said, "I got to tell you, you're really getting good at this." And he said she was right, because he had never done it before. He'd never taken time just to focus on the positive with an employee. He actually started doing it with other employees. It felt good. It was practical. This is right in the wheelbase of this topic, that recognition has a practical aspect of feedback, that it's not just being nice, it's telling people what they did well so they know what to do again. And at the same time, you're telling them, if other people find out or hear, or you do it publicly, you're setting the tone for everyone what we need to get to where we're trying to get to. So it's a great, it's not just feeling good or having them like you. There's an enormous power and recognition in driving results, and feedback is a key aspect of that. And finally, the downside is this is a generation that needs to be challenged. They have a high capacity for work, for stimulation, and they quickly get bored. Okay, so this is, again, if you think of the Nintendo generation, sometimes they're called, this is a group that grew up playing video games. You know how much feedback you get in playing a video game for just 1 minute? 1 minute? Over 50 pieces of feedback, just like this. We take someone with that capacity, enormous capacity for focus and excitement, and we put them in a job and we say, "Now we're going to need you to say, do you want fries with it?" Okay? Do you think you can handle that? Of course they're going to be bored out of their mind. This is why it's important to show them it's not just this job, but here's the things. You know, yeah, there's a job description, but the day the ink dried, it was already out of date in any fast, dynamic, moving organization. Here's what we really need from you: your best thinking, your best ideas. We want you to when you're dealing with the customer, to try to resolve their questions, their concerns. When you have a problem, we want your best thinking as to how we can fix that problem. We want you to involve us as we can, because you're closest to the problem, you're closest to the customer. We want to set them up to be ambassadors for the organization, and to give them that big picture regardless of what the job is, regardless of what they're paid, regardless of at what level it is. So motivating them, I feel, when you take all that into account, really comes down to these variables: how you set up the work direction, the personal development you provide, the social interactions, the feedback, and meaningful rewards. And let me just dive a little deeper in each of those. Work direction here is, again, they need to be challenged. They need to be busy. They're often aren't going to sit around and just come up with work. You've got to constantly be pushing to make that happen. Again, either setting a larger stage or working to keep them as a priority, to keep them engaged. This could be multiple assignments. This could be giving them a choice of assignments. This could be engaging them on we're trying to save money. Any ideas you have for how we can streamline a process or save money, that's what we want to hear from you. And providing and meeting them at that energy to do that, to give them a general structure, but then to also allow them to have their own imprint, to how to, here's what I need, be clear about what you need, but allow them to help find the way. So you're not telling them what to do exactly, but you're saying, here's the goal, here's what we most need, and let them bring their resourcefulness, let them go online, let them talk to their friends about other ideas, let them do a best practice analysis, whatever, to come up with things that can make that happen. Ask for and use their ideas. One of the greatest motivators, and I'm a big believer that the first foundation of recognition, as I've tracked 50 explicit behaviors over 15 years, I'm always amazed that and categorize those into 13 dimensions, 13 factors. 9 of out of 13 don't have any cost. The first foundation of recognition are things that don't cost money. Then if you have money, you can always do more, and you can do that well, but it doesn't have to start with how big the budget is. It could start as simple as asking people for their ideas, involving them in a decision that affects them, especially, certainly thanking them in one-on-one, in praise, in an email, and the email system, and a thank you card. There's all sorts of ways to make that connection. So it's important to, on work direction, to truly have them online, to be excited and engaged, and to give them the capacity to tap into the enormous resources that they bring to bear. In development, I think this is key. We have the fact that it's important to think long term. If this is a microwave generation, everything's instantaneous, then you've got to show them a different length, a different dimension. You've got to show them how what they're doing now can lead to the future that is important to them. So, for example, when I was working with franchisee owners for Pizza Hut, 300 of them in Wisconsin, and this group, I heard them grousing about hiring kids today, and they don't stay, and they're kind of belly aching. And initially, I was sympathetic, and then I said, "Would you guys listen to yourselves?" I said, "Raise your hand if you've ever made a pizza in this room." Every hand went up. Raise your hand if you ever delivered a pizza. Every hand went up. Stop talking about the jobs that you're hiring people for as dead-end minimum wage jobs, because they'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Instead, when you hire someone, you go, "Hey, John, this may not seem like that much of a job to you. I know it's minimum wage, but you met Tony earlier, right? He's our assistant manager. He started in this job 5 months ago. Yesterday, you met remember Sally? We opened a new franchise across town. She's our manager. She started in this job 2 years ago." Pay attention. Even if you're making pizzas, you're delivering pizzas, there's a lot to learn here in any job that could be a stepping stone to your career. Whether you end up having your own business or whether you end up growing with us, there's a lot to learn. Pay attention. You guys set that up. Or I was working with Cragen Auto, the auto parts store distributor. I remember a store manager. He told me, had a new kid, teenager, first day of work. He had him in the back, straightening inventory. And after 45 minutes, the kid comes out. He's all animated. "Come here, I want to show you this." He took him in the back room. He said, "Look at this." And for the last 45 minutes, he's been stacking oil cans. And the manager said he wasn't in the best of moods. He initially went with his knee-jerk reaction, which would have been, "What do you expect, a medal? Get out in aisle 4 and clean up that spill. You kids today, I don't know what you want." Instead, he caught himself and said, "Eric, I don't think I've ever seen oil cans so nicely stacked. I can tell that you're someone that cares about doing a good job. I could use someone like you around here. In fact, tomorrow, I'd like to show you about how we keep inventory. There's going to be no limit to the potential you have in our store, potential you have in this organization. I am so proud you're on my team. What can Eric do except stand up a little bit straighter? You met him at his energy. And I feel management has a responsibility, an obligation to meet people at their energy, to take this generation and not bellyache about and grouse about their limitations, but to see what they have to offer and work through the issues to be able to tap into it in a very real way. So and to me that's a different time construct. You've got to have a longer-term approach in how you talk about things, on how you mentor and coach them over time, how you have developmental instructions and whatnot. Probably one of the best, early in my career, I had a manager that was just a wonderful delegator. I remember he used to say things like, I could probably do this task faster myself if I just did it, but I wanted to give it to you because I thought there was a lot of learning there for you. And that was it had a powerful impact on me to say that he wasn't just giving me work, but he was taking time and he was explaining something. And he'd say, if you have any questions, there's no such thing as a silly question. And that resonated. I think that resonates with this generation, that as you show that you care, as you show that you're personally invested, that they're going to rise to the occasion. And more times than not, do that because of you. Not because of the organization, but because of the person they're working for. If you have a good boss, you got a good job. If you got someone that cares about your future and outlook, you think twice about leaving that person. This is important to realize as we come out of the recession. There's 54% of employees say they're planning to find a new job. 75% of the millennials, the younger generation, saying that they're planning to find a new job as the economy gets better. Now is the time to focus on keeping them before they're walking out the door. And as someone told me this morning, just in the Harvard Business Review, 25% of your highest performers are planning to leave the organization as the economy improves. So it's before that happens that we need to take it seriously. So whether you've had layoffs or cutbacks or salary freezes, and you didn't replace the people that left, and you've asked people to do more work with fewer resources to do it faster, we've got to put back, and recognition is a very, very good way to do that, to show them there's more going on here than the paycheck and the commute. There's helping you reach your career goals and helping and knowing that I'm on your side to make that a reality. Providing opportunities for them to learn and grow. And then part of that should be, I think, their choice. I think for every employee, there should be their choice. Everyone should have something in their job that they're truly excited about. It helps you get through the more routine and rote things that we all have in our jobs, to work on the new tasks, the thing where you're meeting different people or representing the organization or representing the manager in a meeting. Those type of opportunities, I think we should all constantly be strolling for to show them how they can learn on the job. Most development occurs on the job, 90%. In the tasks that you're having them do. So to have that discussion and to set up work that is meaningful to them is critical, I feel, today. The whole social aspect of interactions, this is a very social generation. And although my son said, I didn't like doing work teams together, I know that social aspects are very important to me, and his different friend groups, different affiliations. And so, again, encouraging them to work in teams, especially if that's more motivating to them, that they have fun with that. That's certainly a good thing. But even regardless of work, providing socializing opportunities, I think, is critical. I was working with the California university system, and they had state agencies and a whole group of them. And again, talk about people, and pretty soon they're again complaining about the younger kids. And I remember this one agency. They said, we just don't know what to do. We're so frustrated. Before I can even react to it, someone else in the audience stood up and said, we don't have that problem at our campus. I said, oh, really? Well, what do you do? And they said, well, we kind of try to put ourselves in their shoes, that they're away from home for the first time, maybe a little bit homesick. And what can we do to make where they're working seem more like home. We actually set up a corner of our office. We brought in oversized stuffed chairs, some reading lamps, and made it like it was a living room, a corner of our office. And the kids loved it, and they would socialize, and when they weren't doing work study, they would often study there. They'd pitch in when we needed it. It really built a community, a connection with others that they really valued. So things like that trying to put ourselves in their shoes and say, how can we make that happen? How can we connect them with others? And maybe it's laser tag, maybe it's paintball, maybe it's, Hewitt Associates, they do some cool things that when someone starts, when they interviewed them, if they found out in the interview that they liked softball, they'd sign them up for the softball team before they even started the job. Or they'd give people an Energizer kit. It would be a squirt gun and a stress ball, and a bottle of Excedrin, and just say, hey, you're going to have some fun here. We're going to have some fun together. Or the first 2 weeks, a new employee is in the job, they have a sign-up sheet to have, first 2 weeks, anyone could take them out to lunch. And they make sure they're socializing them to the job, to the organization. I think that's critical, especially with this generation. Feedback, again, enormously important, that providing feedback based on performance. If they got feedback and love just for being who they were, we've got to redefine that and say, that we're going to thank, we're going to acknowledge, we're going to celebrate, but it's got to be on performance. Recognition only works if it's contingent. You can do things to be nice, but it's much more powerful to drive results. So you got to make that connection clear. It's got to be with the context, providing a context for how their contributions relate to our team goals, to the core organizational values, to our strategic objectives, to us being a part of the community. You can't just assume that. You got to actually make that link, and as you do it, whatever feedback you're giving them has greater power because it's now representing them being an ambassador of the organization, a member of the team. It's not just they did a good job on that one assignment, that you're linking it to other goals that are important to them. That's very important to do recognition well. I find in my journeys that there's a lot of misconceptions on recognition out in industry. There's a lot of misuse of recognition, and it undermines the topic for everyone. I think we have to get better at being more strategic in how we use recognition so it's based on performance, so provide a context that adds more meaning with each use. And finally, it's got to be authentic. It's got to come from the heart. It can't be mechanical. I was working with Giorgio Armani, the clothers, and I remember a store manager from Costa Mesa, California. She was telling me about a young kid she had, 22-year-old, slacker, she called him, didn't seem to care about anything. We'd gone over the policies, we did the training, and just never did seem to get it, never seemed to really care, would always be on the cell phone talking to friends, and I'd write him up and reprimand him. Didn't seem to matter. Again, they got a different wavelength as to what's important to them. And one day, out of sheer frustration, she said, I went to him and said, Gary, I am so disappointed in you. You've got so much potential as to what you could achieve in your life. You could start in this job today, and it seems to me it's passing you by. And she said, I didn't know how he'd react to that feedback, that kind of speaking from the heart. She half expected that he was going to say, I don't need to take that from anyone, I'm out of here. But he didn't say that. In a very real way, he came alive for the first time in that job. In that same month, he went on to be their top salesperson in the store, a role that he held for several years. What she did for him, in speaking from the heart and being authentic, is to basically give him a slap upside the head, to say, you're better than your behavior is showing. You could be something. I want to help you be that, and we're in it together. And once that message was clear and got through, then you've got the ability again to mold the person, to really help them once they see that you're sincere about them being a priority to you. This generation needs that. If they were loved by their parents, but they maybe didn't have other people of authority in their lives, that both their parents worked and were gone, in the school system, who knows what they got. For a lot of younger generation, they haven't had a role model in their life to pull them aside and say, hey, you could be someone. I'd like to help you get there. It's a very powerful proposition. If you're sincere about it and you act along those beliefs and you show it, then the return you get from this generation is going to be tenfold, unlimited. And finally, it's the rewards that you may have, they've got to be meaningful. They can't be, one size doesn't fit all anymore. I'm not sure if one size ever fitted, but there's so much garbage that goes on in our industry that there's so many places that have been brainwashed to get a new different type of gemstone and for every 5 years of service, or or the employee of the month, the programmatic focuses of recognition that aren't that effective. You have a employee of the month, and the first month is very exciting, and then at some point in the future, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 2 years, and you've all been there. There's a group sitting around a table, say, well, we got to pick employee of the month. Oh, again already? Yeah, I'd say, well, what about Betty at the front desk? She's so good with our customers. Well, she got it in February. Oh, yeah, I forgot. You can only be excellent once in this organization. So now you're really up against it because all the obvious candidates have already been taken. So come on, we got to pick someone. What about Fred in shipping? Well, does he deserve it? Who cares? So Fred gets it, and basically you turn the program into what? An endurance award. Fred goes, I knew if I stuck around here long enough, I'd be honored. This is what happens in recognition when we take this programmatic, very impersonal approach where we try to manage it through the budget at 5, 10, 15 years. That's not recognition. That doesn't make you feel special. No one stayed a day long in their job to get the years of service pin. When I was working in Toronto with Johnson & Johnson, and they surveyed their employees, they were surprised to find, can you imagine, no one really felt the years of service program motivated them. And I said, well, what are you doing? They go, well, we've been doing the same thing for quite a while, that on someone's 10-year anniversary, they come to work and they have a clock on their desk. They go, a clock, wow, that's really something. And I said, is there anyone around when they get the clock? Not necessarily. Do they have a note from their manager thanking them? No. How about a letter from the CEO thanking them for their years of dedicated service? No, absolutely not. So let me get this straight. Someone on their 10-year anniversary, they come to work, here in the middle of their desk is a clock, right? Well, you know how that's going to play out, right? They pick it up, they go, I wish they'd spell my name right on these things, and this is, in fact, usually the clock isn't there. They got to ask personnel 2 or 3 times, and they get it 3 months late. That's the reality of a lot of formal recognition, and it doesn't work. And I'm not sure if it ever really did work. I think that it's changing times. I have give you an example from my company. My kind of right-hand man. A lot of you from I Love Rewards have talked to him. Nick is just a wonderful employee. His grandfather, when he retired from the company he worked for, they gave him a plaque. He cried. He was so moved and touched by that. That worked for that generation, and it was meaningful. His father worked for Lockheed Martin for 38 years. On his 35th anniversary, you know what they did for him? They gave him a coffee mug. On his desk, no one around. He went into a serious funk for 3 days. He actually had dismissed the whole topic of, Nick said he's working on recognition, he kind of dismissed that. He got a coffee mug at work. He said, let me see that book. There's got to be more to life here than the coffee mug. He was in a serious depression because of that. Nick, you take Nick's of the younger generation. You want to know what rewards him? He was working for me. While he was finishing his degree, he just graduated last May. He's valedictorian, actually, where he graduated. He calls me up. He goes, Bob, I want you to send me to Italy for a graduation gift. I said, book it. Geez, what do you have? If he knows what he wants and he makes it clear and he's worth it, absolutely. And he did that. He had a great time. It was actually a couple months later, he said, you know that trip? That was a great trip. Thank you so much. Going, it was easy to, he told me what motivated him. He told me his rewards he wanted. And I didn't say, well, if I do that for you, I got to do it for everyone. If I got someone else that is half the employee he has been, I would gladly do that for them as well. So we've got to have rewards that are meaningful, which means that they have a say in that. So we've got to be creative with rewards. Again, one size doesn't fit all. It can't just be a program. And this is actually an actual picture of a manager that is, as a challenge, this is a manager. She's washing an employee's car. So it has fun. Fun's an energizer. Fun's a motivator. Have fun with it, and do things that are creative. It's got to be varied. You've got to allow people a choice. What motivates people is different for each of us. The more choice you can give them in a selection or providing a vehicle like a gift card where they can pick what does it for them, whether it's something for their family or something, and just when you just look at the category of merchandise, there's been a drastic shift over the last decade from logo jewelry and crystal to more lifestyle merchandise, a gym bag or a Weber barbecue, things they can do with their family. So just in that range, but beyond that, there's a lot more. Allowing people to have things that are personalized, that are experiences, is especially important to this generation. It's a chance to do something they've never done before for the bragging rights to their friends of what they did. I feel very, very critical. And it's funny because I was looking at this stuff in terms of meeting this generation today, and really the best way to do it, and it kind of came back to that you really got to have a software platform that meets them at this. And I Love Rewards didn't pay me to be here today. In fact, Razor called me and he said, "Bob, we'd love to have you speak." And actually, I had to change my plans because I was scheduled to speak at a state conference in the States today. And I said, "Razor, I believe what you guys are about." And yesterday, some of you might have heard me say that I honestly believe this company is going to change the industry. This company has the solution that is long, long overdue. And I'm so passionate about the message that they're doing, and they do it right, that we have this perfect alignment in our philosophies that I said, I want to be there. I want to be a part of this. I really believe that the solution they have is the one not just for this generation, but for all generations. And I'm so excited about that. And honestly, when you look at the backdrop of the millennials, what's important to them and how we can best meet that, high tech, okay? Frequent praise, we can do that through the solution. Socially, peer-to-peer, very social, we can capture that. High choice, high quality, very flexibility, changing with the times, changing with their preferences, changing with the goals of the group or the organization. This system allows you to drive all that, and to me, that's why it works for me. I know for a lot of you in this room, it's working for you as well. So my hat's off to I Love Rewards for figuring it out and really bringing the possibility of making this topic come alive in ways that most people haven't seen. Every incentive company today, and there's many, many of them, they all have an online solution. But for so many of them, it's skin deep, and it's not real. And it's a ruse that's really a trick to sell you all the stuff in their warehouse. And to me, after a while, I kind of get sick of that. And I just am so encouraged by a company that really has the belief there and is following it with the capacity to really help you deliver. I can't say enough about it. And so with that, I'm not sure where we are on time, but let me open up. I can't believe I'm a little bit early. I usually talk over. So I got some time for questions. And actually, if you have a question, I actually brought my longest book to give you. It's called the Field Book, 1001 Rewards and Recognition Field Book. It talks about, got about a decade of my life in this book, about how to create a culture of recognition. So how to overviews my doctoral research, talks about the obstacles, the process. I've got best practices, got a lot of templates, training designs, everything I could pack into this book onto how to move truly to a culture of recognition. If you've got a question, I got a book. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I noticed that the Generation X was the age range was a little long. In some of the other research, it also creates Generation Y. Do you think that X and Y had so many similarities that they were not needed, or do you have a different philosophy on it?
Well, the generation, it's not an exact science. In fact, usually the generations are labeled after the fact. And this generation, I'm calling them the Millennials. In the video clip, they call them the next generation. Sometimes they're the me generation, the Gen Yers. And one of the things that are kind of sloppy about it is that it would be nice if each one of these generations was exactly a decade. It's not like that. Some of them are like 8 years. Some of them are, the baby boomers span like 21 years. So it's really kind of looking at where did things change for what was going on in society and the influences, and that really defines why it's a different mix and different for each generation. Did I get to your question in there somewhere? Okay. Who else? Yes. And I'll just keep the books up here. Please come up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. I work in a workplace, probably like most people, that has a mix of generations. And I find myself pretty aligned with the millennials because I probably am one. And I often give that kind of context that you talked about for why we're doing what we're doing, the big picture, corporate goals, alignment. And I sometimes find that the expression I get back from our long-term baby boomers is like, why is she telling us this stuff? And I don't really care.
You get that back from the baby boomers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they,
so
they don't need it.
How do you speak to that? Because it almost seems like they disengage while I might be speaking to the millennials. So how do you balance those?
Well, one, maybe you don't have to speak to them both at the same time. Maybe like in the clip we saw the guy just pulled together the millennials and talked to them to get to know them better. And actually, for the younger generation, time with the manager is more important. You take an older generation, they want less time with the boss. Trust me that I know what I'm doing. Keep out of my hair. Don't micromanage me. For the younger generation, they welcome that authority and the attention of authority. So that makes them feel special just having the FaceTime. So maybe it's not doing it together in the same group. If you get pushback from the other generations about that, then I tell them why. I know you don't need it, but I feel they do, and I want to. Part of getting us on the same wavelength is to helping them understand what we need from them. All performance starts with clear goals, and if we don't if we don't make it clear what we need from them, we can't expect it to happen magically. I worked with the McDonald's Corporation, and they had a problem, as you can imagine, with younger kids coming to work on time. And I talked with them about and well, how do you do scheduling? And well, the assistant manager sets the schedule. Well, what's that based on? Well, they base it on whatever they feel like. And I go, why don't you start basing that on who's the best employee, on who's doing the performance, and giving them their choice of schedule, of hours. And then those that are motivated to make the job work will get a better choice of schedule. And the people that aren't working out that well anyway, they'll get the last choice. Maybe they'll quit. And that'll be a blessing. And they go, oh, you're a genius, you're a genius. No, it's common sense. Just give people the things that are important to them in alignment with the job they did. Don't just have that be that someone's job to do that. Or when you have an employee that isn't coming to work on time, now you could say, well, they should know better. Everyone should know that. But if you're not getting the behavior, they don't know better. So you guys start with performance standards. So even if it's something as simple as being on time, you guys say, well, you may not know because you're not here, that people have to cover for you, and it's kind of a madhouse here, and that's why we need you here on time. And you keep talking to them until they see the priority of that. That's, setting expectations is the first step in performance management. And then the second most important thing is then noticing it when they do it. So I remember talking to a manager at McDonald's, and he said, so I had the talk with them, and they agreed to be on time. Yeah, so what happened? Well, the next day, were they on time? Yeah, they were. What'd you do? Nothing. I expect them to be on time. Okay. Next day, were they on time? Yeah, what'd you do? Nothing. I expect them to be on time. Next day, 10 minutes late. What'd you do? I knew I couldn't count on you. Well, come on. You're going to get. Well, you're reaping what you sow. That you actually said that you really didn't believe what you're doing, and you snap back to that I knew I couldn't count on you. You got to instead, when the first time you have the behavior that aligns with the performance you wanted, you got to make a big thing out of that. It may seem artificial to you, but you got to say, hey, Tony, I see you're on time today. That may not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal to me. Because we just had that talk about the importance of being on time. It shows me you really want to work out in this job. Thank you so much. Guess what? You just had a big imprint on Tony. And so you don't have to do that every day through the rest of his career, but initially you have to do that till you get that behavior as a habit from them. Now, how do you do that? You may not do that in front of the whole group. You may pull that person aside. So again, to do recognition well, there's a little bit more to it for being a common sense proposition that if you do it in the whole group, you're kind of saying, you only notice after you've been someone that has been a poor performer. That's the only time we notice you, so that's not good. So maybe you do it more one-on-one. Other questions? Yes, sir. Good. Yeah, I'm not sure everyone can hear, but the point is just sort of the impact of the unions. And every place I go, every place I've worked, and I've worked with over 1,000 organizations on this topic, we all have different constraints. And my big advice on this is to work within those constraints as to what you can do. Don't hide behind what you can't. And so it's easy to say, well, we're unionized, so what can we do? But it's a very real constraint. I realize that. And so I know this point came up in some of the sessions yesterday that to me, I would try to involve the union in what you're doing. I'd try to have them be part of the say, to have them see the value of recognition, so it's part of their idea, because it's not going to go down if you force it on them. And so there's no doubt that the union has a different agenda, and it's treating everyone the same. Well, treating everyone the same leads to, truth be known, to a culture of mediocrity. I don't know a faster beeline for being average than to treat everyone exactly the same. It's got to be different strokes for different folks. It's got to be management's about differentiating, about rallying around performance and the performance that made it happen, and at the other end of the extreme, taking on those people that aren't making it happen. So if you can't have that be, if that's all dictated by the union contract, it's going to be out of your hands. But fortunately, in my experience with unions, is the stuff we're talking about here is below the radar of the union contract, because that's all about promotion rules and work grievance rules. It's about seniority, how you treat someone, and acknowledging them for doing a good job. That usually the contract aren't to that level of detail of interactions. And so again, I think that you can make this happen, especially at the recognition level, because it's the right thing to do. Because people want to be part. Everyone, even the union members, they want to be part of something larger than themselves, where they have a pride. I've had union people tell me that because the traditional benefits are all set by the contract, all the more reason why you need to do this, to have some differentiation on me really caring about the job I do. So that my feedback would be to view it that way, and at every chance possible to involve the union, to have them on the recognition committee, to be asking them their opinions so they're part of the solution, so you get their buy-in as to what you decide to do together. Last thing you want is the we versus they. Other questions?
I have one, and it has something to do with outcome. I'm the baby boomer generation in a 50-year-old company with a lot of us. At the same time, our growth is at such a rate that the majority of our employees are much younger. Our smallest demographic is that 30 to 45 age group where our future leadership lies. And so I'm trying to anticipate the future as much as anything else to help this bank be another 50 years old. We started doing generational training a few years ago, recognizing that most of our managers were so different from the people they managed. And what we found is that they were so interested, and really it all made sense, but they drifted back to their old patterns.
They being the baby boomers?
The boomers, yes, the boomers.
Okay.
We were very concerned about training our managers, who were primarily an older group, to be more understanding, how to motivate it, so forth and so on. What became very apparent is that they need constant training.
That they what?
They need constant training. They revert back to their natural old ways. And I think we're all really short-sighted if we don't recognize that this takes constant reinforcement. I'm extremely focused on the millennials and the Xers and helping them have career paths. And I have 6 children in every age of dysfunction, so I kind of understand this generation thing. And I've seen literally what motivates the 40-year-old and what motivates the 18-year-old. And I think that we all have to be extremely careful that we're working both ends at the same time. What I'm wondering about is what happens if we don't. And I'm not just saying that, oh, alarmist. I'm really wondering if we have a bunch of boomers that get disappointed, we're just going to retire. If we have a bunch of Gen Xers that get disappointed and they don't quite achieve everything they want, they weren't as spoiled and they won't be as disappointed. They just may move jobs around. The millennials seem to be...
Or they're going to become a whole generation of cynics.
Exactly.
In a very real way.
Exactly. The millennials, on the other hand, are so idealistic. They've been so loved. They've been so nurtured. And I'm not altogether sure the outcome for the millennials, who are very disappointed and bitter, isn't almost dangerous. I think that we've got to be extremely cognizant of this generation. Beyond motivating them to work harder, let's motivate them, so that they have good lives, quite honestly. Because that 20-year-old coming out of college is not able to find that teaching job that everybody said they were so short of having. And 3 years looking for that teaching job, they are now a teller in a bank. And they're not happy at all. And how the heck are you going to motivate that disappointed teller to give you good customer service? And the outcome, I'm afraid, we haven't figured out yet. We haven't figured out what's going to happen to these people if we don't, as a society, figure out how to blend these generations better. Do you see anything? Are you seeing any indicators of what we're going to be dealing with, say, 10 years from now?
Well, I feel your comments are very insightful in that we can't value any one generation over the others. So the last thing I'd want to have is the baby boomers to feel less valued because these new kids, we've got to make them feel special. We're going to coddle them. That's not going to go over very well. I think you answered your own question, that this isn't something that we can announce one time, expect people to get it. We have to have an ongoing dialogue. And to me, it says, well, let's get creative about that. Maybe we team people up from different generations. So we set up a mentoring relationship where we have, some organizations I work with, like the federal government, which has a huge challenge in hiring the younger generation. They get real creative. One of the ideas, for example, that the U.S. government currently has 20,000 openings for accountants, and they can't hire the younger generation because they go there, it's like working with my grandparents. I'm not interested. And so they come up with ideas like, well, what if we hired 2 of them at a time so they'd have someone to talk to, and getting really creative. There's got to be more. We've got to be more to connect the generations, and whether it's a mentoring system or whether it's ongoing dialogues and conversations, whether we give them a chance to bring up and voice the way they see the world and have a discussion. So there's, all rapport comes from shared experiences. I think it's ongoing dialogue that we need to make, and maybe that's different from the past, where we didn't have to spend so much time with that. So if we're ever asked a question, please come out. I got a book for you. Let me just. Can I get the next slide? I'm wrapping up. Honest. Okay. No, you're done. Okay. So I was. And with that, Mark, back to you. All right.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. Thank you very much, Dr. Bob. As you can tell, Dr. Bob is passionate about this subject, and he's around to answer any of the questions, so please stick around and ask them if you have them. He's almost as passionate about this subject as Razor is about throwing a party. So stick around tonight for the culture event. You'll see what I mean. So for the rest of the afternoon, we're going to go into our Alzheimer's Society-sponsored coffee break. We ask that you step out into the foyer, enjoy some coffee, and please donate into the blue boxes. It's touched a lot of our lives, mine included, so I'd really appreciate that. And then we'll be moving to the breakout sessions. Pier 2 and 3 to your right when you leave the auditorium will be for sales and marketing, and then back where you came in through reception is Pier 5, which is the HR track. So thank you everyone again. Enjoy your afternoon. Oh, one more thing from Dr. Bob.
Yes, and this is important because I'm going to thank Island Rewards for they bought copies of my book, 1,001 Ways to Reward Employees, for everyone here. So please get a copy of that on the way out. And then I brought my own gift. I brought for everyone a mouse pad of the top 10 ways to motivate today's employees. So 2 gifts for you on the way out. Thank you.